Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We have an exciting presentation for you today that will provide insight from beginning your career to promotional opportunities and how to set yourself up for success in this industry. Today's discussion will feature Perry Kirwan, VP Technology Management of Banner Health, Erica Cuthbertson, Corporate Recruiter of Agility, Ray Marden, founder of Insight HTM, and will be moderated by Dave Francoeur, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Sales of Tech Knowledge Associates, LLC. The panelists will dive deep into the hiring and training process in a healthcare technology management profession and how to excel and grow in an HTM career. Today's webinar is sponsored by HTM Jobs, a niche job board that connects qualified candidates to open positions in the HTM community. Make sure to visit often so you don't miss out on any new opportunities. Please visit htmjobs.com. 2 lucky attendees will win a pair of Apple AirPods for tuning in to today's webinar. We will select the winners from the attendees and connect with you after the webinar to send your prize. A few announcements before we get started. We are excited about the upcoming 2021 MD Expo in Dallas, Texas on April 16th and 17th, 2021. For more details, visit mdexposhow.com. While you're there, scroll to the bottom of the homepage and sign up for our newsletter to receive the most up-to-date information on our events. Today's live webinar is eligible for 1 continuing education credit from the ACI. You can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. More details on this at the end of today's webinar. We will wrap up today's presentation with a live Q&A. You can submit your questions anytime during the webinar by using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. We will get through as many attendee questions as time allows. As I mentioned earlier, our presentation today features Perry Kirwan, Erica Cuthbertson, Ray Marden, and Dave Francoeur. Dave, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I just a couple minutes, I'd actually like to take and acknowledge a few things as well. First of all, as always, I want to thank the TechNation group, Mr. Craig and his team, for such a wonderful opportunity to be able to provide and host this so that the industry can grow. Second, I'd like to thank the panelists for their time and their talents and expertise for participating in this so that you all can benefit from their expertise and talents. Lastly, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Craig again, as the HTM Jobs has just gone through and facilitated their first endeavor transaction by having one of their people hired, we believe. So congratulations to the team again for such an awesome thing that they've done to support the industry. So without further ado, I want to again thank the panelists for being part of this and bringing their expertise and talents to all of us and sharing their knowledge and wisdom in terms of how we can grow and how we can prosper in this very illustrious, awesome career for which I've spent so much time. And I do invite all of you to come to Dallas and visit me because I live here and would happily come see you during the upcoming show. So if we may, Erica, if you don't mind, would you first start out by introducing yourself and helping us understand who you are?
Sure, thanks, Dave. So I'm Erica Cuthbertson. I'm a corporate recruiter at Agility. I've been a recruiter for 18 years in the healthcare space and have worked on a wide variety of positions and really enjoy developing strategic plans and partnering with my hiring managers on helping them to find the right talent and people for the roles on their teams. Agility is a nationwide organization of almost 4,000 employees now. We provide services to hospitals and clinics to help them better manage their medical equipment. We have several different service lines, clinical engineering being just one of them. So clinical engineering is where our biomedical equipment techs and imaging engineers work.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Ray, how about you?
I got my start in biomed in 2001 in the United States Air Force, and since then have worked in just about every segment of the biomed industry, from major HTOs to private hospitals to public hospitals, VA facilities. I've worked for small OEMs. I've been self-employed on a couple of different occasions. So I've been on cruise ships. Who knew there were HTM on cruise ships until we got a phone call one day saying, can you come do the clinic on our cruise ship? And there's a whole niche there. So I've kind of been exposed to the entirety of the career field in probably 30 different states of the union over the last 20 years in various leadership and technical roles. I also do some writing for the HTM Jobs Career Center website, which I pour my heart out to some of the struggles that I faced throughout my career and some of the things that I picked up along the way that have worked, some of which after many schools of hard knocks. So I try to distill all my hard lessons into really practical short articles that can really help anybody make the right choices for themselves, and in the meantime really help their employers succeed. My experience in this industry is that I never was able to find a specific role that suited me and my growth over time, and have been part of outsourcing and furloughs and restructurings and all sorts of difficult challenges in my career that I've somehow managed to stay on top of and still build a career through those challenges. So I'm really here to speak to you about how to hold yourself and your goals through the course of your career and really focus your career when you're beginning to try to choose an employer. So a little bit about me.
All right, that's some great insight, and you certainly have some awesome experiences that I think are going to be very meaningful and valuable to today's conversation. So thanks. And certainly last but certainly not least, Mr. Perry, please, and all your wonderful esteemed background.
Well, good afternoon or morning, everybody, depending on where you're calling from. I'm Perry Kerwin, and I am the Vice President of Technology Management for Banner Health Technology Management, NTEC. A couple things that I'd like to start off with is one, I'm very honored to be speaking with my fellow panelists this morning. And I also want to thank all of you that have called into this webinar today. And I hope that what we put together collectively for you, you find some value in. A little bit about Banner Health. So we are based in the Southwest, headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. The system is about 52,000 employees, a little bit north of 6,000 beds now, 30 hospitals in 6 states. We have well over 225,000 pieces of equipment and the like that we maintain. Our HTM organization is about 250 strong. And also, which is kind of a unique wrinkle, I guess, for in-house programs, we run a commercial enterprise NTEC. So actually, I on some days will be an independent service organization myself, and we run that under the trade name NTEC. So again, very happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you so much. So obviously, as you can see, we have quite an array of all the different experiences, which is phenomenal. And again, thank you so much for participating. I think what I'll do, I'll start it out easy. Let's just make it easy. I'll ask each one of you to participate in this question. So I guess my question would be, what is it that you feel is important for a candidate to have in terms of skill sets that you would want to bring and be part of your teams, part of what you're doing? And I would ask each one of you to speak to that if you wouldn't. Let's go reverse order. Perry, let's start with you.
Well, so I think the thing, and I'll pick up kind of on something that Ray said earlier, right? I think a number of us, if you've been doing this for a while, you all have some learnings in the school of hard knocks. And one of the things that we've kind of gravitated to, I think, through the collective experience here in Banner is that we've really made a shift in looking for soft skill talent over hard skill talent. And what I mean by that, hard skills would be things like, how are you formally trained? Do you have a degree? What type of practical and real job experience do you have in the field that's actually job related? So some examples of that. Whereas soft skills, really what we're looking at is how are you going to perform as a deliverer of service at the end of the day? So things like how well do you communicate? How do you feel about customer service? What does that mean to you? Where do you stand sort of philosophically around that? And sort of what motivates you in a given day to kind of keep going and doing the job that you do? Do you expect people to kind of control your career for you? Or are you a self-starter? Do you have self-initiative? How do you feel about learning and education? What does that even mean to you? And then how do you apply that in a practical sense? So kind of some high-level themes there, Dave, and I'm sure we can dig deeper into any one of those if needed.
Yeah, that's great. Let's give your colleagues a chance to respond, and then I'll probably draw a question or two from that. Ray, how about yourself?
Some of the critical characteristics that I really like to see in anybody that I work with, whether I work under them or directly with them on a team, is the ability to communicate in your own style and fashion, and along with that, taking the time to write clearly is so critical, and it's one of the skills that like Perry was saying, there are soft skills and hard skills, and communication is really a soft skill that you can work on your own. There's a lot of books, there's a lot of ways that you can take your spoken and written word seriously and really become instantly a more effective communicator, which makes your you gets to come out when you're speaking with your authentic voice. And I really like to work with people who are doing that. I notice when people start rambling or getting too nervous, that often you're trying to imagine what people want to hear, and that type of communication I found in HTM is pretty dangerous. When you have something broken or you need to communicate that something happened and you're trying to manage the situation, it's a pretty rare quality, in fact, that as far as I've seen, the ability just to stay neutral and say exactly what you mean to say, and be really clear in your communication. So that's a hard skill that you can work on: writing, speaking, comfortably using your own style and tone. And then self-appraisal, just constantly being aware. I know we're often critical of those around us and the structures above us, and so to turn that in and make sure that you're doing your bit, and like Perry alluded to, having a goal and a focus that's clear, and appraising whether or not those goals and dreams are realistic in the organization you're in. That's where I would start with some of the skills that I like to work with.
Great, thank you. Erica?
Yeah, so I think Perry and Ray both hit on some key points. As a working in HTM, you are in a service position, whether you're working directly for the hospital or working for a service organization like Agility. So you're servicing the clinical team, you're keeping their equipment up and running and functioning. And so it is really important to have those good communication skills, good customer service skills. And those are things that we vet out during the interview. At Agility, we use a behavioral interviewing process, asking candidates to provide examples to really showcase what their communication, customer service, teamwork skills are. However, before you can get to meet with a VP like Perry Kerwin, you probably have to have something on your resume that's going to get you in the door, right? And so that's the other piece. The hard skill is that we do look for candidates at the very entry level, have a affinity to fixing and repairing things, who, whether you've had a job or had education, if it's something you've done as a hobby, you definitely want to showcase that type of skill set or experience or affinity to fixing and repairing, especially when it comes to electronics.
Great. So all great answers, and there's some nuances that I'd like to expound upon if I could. So I'm going to start back with you, Erica. You mentioned something about a behavioral interview process. I think that's intriguing, and I think it could be very meaningful for the people out in the participation audience here to hear a little bit more about what that looks like and what do they need to do to prepare for that. What does that look like, and how do they make sure that they excel in that process? Can you share a little of that?
Sure, definitely. So behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that past behavior predicts future behavior. So what they're looking for in a behavioral interview is examples of times when you've handled different situations. What I would suggest to prepare is to think about your 3 best success stories, regardless of what they are, kind of have them mapped out in your head as far as what happens during that success story. Something that you did really well in your community, in school, and work. Maybe it was a project that you worked on, a time when you were able to handle a difficult customer, any of those types of examples. Just keep them fresh in your head. Then when you go to the interview, you'll be prepared to use those stories to answer the questions. You'll get questions such as, tell me about a time when you had to manage an angry customer, or give me an example of a time when you worked as part of a team. What role did you play? Different questions like that, so that it gives the interviewer information on how you operate in the work or team environment, whether it is an actual work experience or a school experience or a community experience. It gives them an insight and a picture to who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's great. That's good feedback. So contrastly, if I may, Perry, I'd like to come over to you. And you talked a little bit around how it's important from a communication. Soft skills were as important, if not more important. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but how do you assess that during an initial interview, or even before an initial interview? How do you assess someone's ability to be able to communicate, or their soft skills capabilities? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that you need an interview in order to give any kind of an assessment on it. I don't think there is a brilliant way for anybody to write anything down and for us to extrapolate anything meaningful from that in terms of soft skill, other than if your objective is to evaluate how well somebody writes. That would be the exception to that, obviously. The one thing that I'll do too is let me clarify a little bit why I said what I said really around the soft skill piece versus hard skill. So our philosophy is that you're generally wired as a human the way that you're wired. And you can develop soft skills and all of that, but it's very much a development process. And when we look at formal education, they don't spend a lot of time, at least in the technical fields, developing that, right? So generally, if people are growing in those skills, they're having to find some way to do that on their own. And that's one of the things that we're interested in, is to see the effort and what steps people have taken in order to do that. Now, by contrast, a hard skill, right? It's education, it's the courses that you take, it's going to manufacturers training, it's on-the-job training, it's all these things, right, that you'll pick up along the way. But our philosophy is that we can train those until the cows come home. That's really, really easy work to do when you think about it, right? Because it's just a matter of providing individuals with specific opportunities and say, go do that. Whereas soft skills and all of that, it's not as easy. I can tell people, hey, this is what I want you to do, go do that. But now I'm getting into how they're innately wired as a human being, and that always doesn't work out. You can't just give people instruction like that in the soft skill variety. So how do we assess that, Dave? We do that very similar, I think, to what Erica outlined. These are behavior patterned interviews in there. We have similar questions, and I'm not going to repeat them because Erica really gave us some great examples of that. But one thing that I would tell candidates is don't get hung up necessarily on the question, because some of the object here is just how you answer. It's not the answer itself. If you're fumbling around and you're searching for yourself, or you're fidgeting in your chair and getting nervous, you're not ready for an interview like that. On the other hand, if you deliver an answer that's polished, sounds like you know what you're talking about, shows a little bit of thought about how you problem solve and the like, you're going to do very well. So I know, because we're math and science oriented, we get hung up on answers, right? We got, what's the right answer? There is no right answer, right? It's what you say, it's kind of how you deliver it. And are you prepared, right? How do you conduct yourself when answered a question like that?
Great. That was great. Good feedback from both of you guys. So Ray, I saw you shaking your head quite a bit throughout that process. I'm going to change it just a little bit. I'd like to hear from your perspective. How would one go about preparing themselves to be ready for what we just talked about, and maybe even the next step in terms of what would they do around making sure that their resume would show and reflect that kind of individual skill sets and the capabilities and abilities. So what does that look like for you?
I think everyone can ask for help outside of the hiring process. If you don't have a strong resume, if you don't know that your resume is strong, don't send it in to these guys. These guys are going to offer you, good jobs and desirable locations, and you'll have, there's a million opportunities. So my advice is pretty simple. As far as the soft skills go, there are a million books on the subject to constantly, improve. As far as the nervousness and the agitation and the polish goes, I find, like Perry was saying, a lot of people want to answer the right questions and they lose themselves in it, and they're not speaking from their knowing or their confidence. So, staying in who you are when you're in that interview chair helps you stay more focused and present. There's a lot of opportunity for self-growth, and I'm sorry, I got a little distracted from something out here. Dave, can you reiterate your question for me so I make sure that I answer it well?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you're going down a good path, by the way. But essentially, what we're asking is, from your perspective, what kind of things can be put on a resume that would demonstrate that they have the soft skill capabilities, as well as what are you looking for as evidence during the process, through the resume process, that would help demonstrate that somebody has those skill sets?
I think, like Perry said, it's going to be hard to demonstrate soft skills on a resume unless you're a really, really excellent writer, and that's going to come through, and that's a skill that is also desirable in this career field. I think, as far as, soft skills, that's what I guess what I'm coming back to is they're going to be your own responsibility. So things like mentorship, things like I offer on LinkedIn occasionally to review people's resume and help them with the technical writing. I didn't write my first resume. It's really hard to condense yourself into a bullet. So there's some things you can do. Write your story, especially if you don't have, write your story towards the questions that Erica was talking about, some of those scenarios. And you can hand your story to a resume writer that can really help you make it something you believe in. Because if you don't believe in it, at the end of the day, if you don't believe in your resume and you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe why you're in that interview, that's what's going to keep you from getting the job. Showing up, knowing who you are and where your boundaries are, where you need to grow some, and being open about where you are growing and showing how you're actively growing. That's a way you can show your soft skills, I guess, is to put in some information about what it is that you do for your own personal development, just to show that, in my opinion, a soft skill is evaluating yourself accurately. There's a lot, mentorship, self-training, correspondence courses, just getting with somebody who you respect and admire, or that you like their communication style, and hearing their story and how they got where they are. They don't have to know that they're your mentor. I have several mentors, and some of them don't know that's what, if I called them that, they would stop taking my phone calls. So you just can learn from everybody around you. They're great people in this industry. They're happy to share their wisdom. So,
Hey,
Awesome.
Dave, can I add a couple of sentences, please?
Please, absolutely.
So here's something that I found on a recent resume that I thought was pretty cool, because we're like, okay, how do we quantify a soft skill on a resume? We had an applicant apply, and one of the things when I was looking down into hobbies and other interests, what they said was, I'm a member of Toastmasters. And I'll tell you, if you've done Toastmasters before, you learn how to speak in public. And that's going to make you really pretty good in theory, right? If you really take that program serious, you're going to be a good oral communicator. Let's put it that way. So that might be something that's a kind of a take home for folks. Consider that. It's kind of a cool thing.
Perry, I think that's a great ad, and I really appreciate you pulling that out. And I think, to your point, look, I mean, people can put words on a piece of paper. It doesn't mean that they're sincere or that they're accurate, but at least it's a tendency that says they're aware of something that's important and they've taken steps in theory to try to improve themselves. So those are good attributes, as you've all indicated, that would indicate somebody's astute enough to know what they should or shouldn't be working towards. So I think those are great comments that you've all made. You know, one takeaway that I got from all of you was, and I guess I'm looking for a nod of a head or a yes or no if I've missed it, but the takeaway that I got was, look, you're going to be asked questions, probably behavioral type questions, where it's not necessarily crucial that you get the answer correct, is more so is the thought process and the process that you went through during the scenario that you're describing, as in lessons learned or takeaways or advancements or growths that you came away with through the process, not necessarily the outcome. Is that a fairly accurate statement? And that people should sit back when asked a question in an interview, reflect on the question, try to interpret what it is that you're looking to derive, and answer the question in that way that shows that you've learned through the process. Is that fair? Is that what you guys would agree to?
I would say to an extent, if they're asking you about customer service skills, don't give an example of a time when you really screwed up. I mean, it's probably not going to be a good example to provide. So, definitely try to provide something that puts you in a positive light. And I did just want to touch on the nervousness that was mentioned. It's okay to be nervous in an interview. And I've actually had managers come back to me and tell me that a candidate was too polished and I just couldn't get under the polish to get to know the real person. So just be aware of memorizing your answers and not being able to kind of step back into your own self.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback. And I guess I just quick question. So honestly, sometimes I think I don't mind sharing sometimes where I've made a mistake in an interview, but then to say how I've learned from it and how it won't happen again and how I grew from that. So, I mean, I appreciate your position and don't necessarily say nothing negative, but do it in a positive spin, I guess, if that's a good example for you.
Yeah, Dave, we actually ask questions around that. It's like, tell us something that didn't go well, right?
Yeah.
What happened? What did you do? And yeah, so it gives you a really good opportunity to take kind of a bad situation, right? But reconstruct it in a way that shows, what did I do about it, right? Positive interventions and those likes.
Totally agree. So, okay, let me paint a different picture. So I think all of you are aware of the fact that this industry is hurting in terms of resources. Real quick stats. I don't know if they're 100% accurate, but they're at least directionally correct. There's 45 to 50,000 people in this industry. Approximately 2,000 to 3,000 are leaving a year based on retirement or otherwise. And because of all the schools closing and everything happening, only 200 to 300 coming in. That puts us at a pretty significant deficit within the next 3 years or so. Almost 20% of the industry will be gone. So my question to you is, how do you profess to see the industry changing, and how is that going to impact the way you're going to go about looking for people and the skill sets and the talents that you want associated with individuals because of the mix and the challenges that's coming that way? Ray, let's start with you.
I see the industry changing quickly, needing to change quickly, especially as all those siloed bodies of knowledge retire and start sunsetting and taking all of their experience with them. It's not uncommon for people that I've worked with to have been in this field for 40 years. Seems like everybody that I when I started kind of came in around 1985, like the good quarterbacks of the old NFL era. Every good biomed I know was from 85. We are there. That's a real need, and there's some solutions popping up. We've taken a unique approach at my company of trying to take on a sort of a mentor apprentice in the field. We've done that for a couple of years. We're getting set up with the Skill Bridge program through the DoD. So there's a lot of places trying to plug in new talent. But I think the industry is going to have to change for that talent. I think we're going to have more processes in place, technology processes in place to make the workflow more efficient than it was for the previous generation that was used to everything being disparate as far as the test equipment and the work order systems and where the manuals are. I see technology really putting everything in our hands and making the daily workflow for technicians more fluid. I think grabbing a mentor for new people, especially the older they are in your shop, would be a great thing when you come on board with any of these people. But finding somebody in the business for 20 or 30 years and getting them to download as much as they can before in the business for 20 or 30 years and getting them to download as much as they can before they go there to the way of retirement. I see those as some of the shifts and ways to adapt here as we start losing all of these people, as we are losing all of these people faster than we gain them. The workflow, like you said, if the staff isn't there, the workflow is going to have to get more efficient so that we can do more work if there's just not more people. So that's my 2 cents on that topic.
Great. No, I agree. So Erica, do you agree? Basically directionally, at least with what Ray's saying? And if so, how does that change your hiring practices? How does that change what you're looking for in an individual?
Sure. So what Agility did a couple of years ago is create what we call a medical equipment tech position. And I know we all use job titles differently in different ways, but for us, this is a job that we can use to hire people new into the field. And it can be, they can have no background, but just, maybe have an interest or affinity, and we start to train them on equipment. We offer them tuition reimbursement to go back to school to get the training if they decide this is something they want to do long term. And so we're basically using that position to create our own pipeline of candidates coming into the field. We also participate in the SkillBridge program we started last year. So we're, I think, at our 4th or 5th placement at this point, and it's going really well. So we're excited to see that going. And for those in the audience who don't know what SkillBridge is, basically it's a transition program for individuals leaving the military to learn a new skill or trade that they can use in the civilian workforce. So we're not just bringing BMETs out of the military, though we had a couple of good opportunities last year with that, but we're also bringing individuals who haven't been working as BMETs and training them through our medical equipment tech program into this new career path that they can find. So also partnering a lot with the schools that are out there and making sure that their students are getting internships and getting that hands-on experience so that they can then find positions, hopefully within our organization or within other companies across the U.S. There may not be biomedical equipment technology programs as much as there used to be, but there are still electronics technology programs. And so we want to make sure that we're connecting with the instructors of those programs and the students of those programs to know that there is this biomedical equipment tech career path out there for them to be a part of. So those are some of the efforts that we're making to keep the candidates coming in to the field as much as possible. But I think that it's for us as an organization, it's a nationwide effort, and for the industry, it's an industry-wide effort that needs to keep happening. Also, Amy has recently created a new certification, the CABT, that does not require the previous 4 years of experience that the CBET requires. And so that's another avenue for someone who has the electronics background but has maybe never worked as a BMAT to get a certification and show their interest in the career path.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. So Perry, I want to take it to the next step if I can with you. I mean, first of all, you can comment as to whether or not you agree with what these guys have said, but more importantly, what I'd like to hear from you is, so how does this impact both your current staff as well as, I mean, most of the people who are on this call, I'm assuming, are already in the field, and they may be deciding to make a change, whether that's to go in-house, ISO, start their own business, whatever the case is. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, from your perspective, how do you orchestrate what you currently have, keeping them engaged and keeping them wanting to continue to grow, and then bringing in new folks and integrating them into your existing programs? And what does that look like? And how would I get jazzed up to maybe want to come change who I am and what I'm doing? What does that look like? Does that make sense? And what do you thought?
Yeah, well, thank you for that softball question, Dave. That's so the first thing I would say, I don't agree with anything that Erica and Ray said. No,
There you
just
go.
kidding, just kidding. No, these are all realities. And one of the things that I appreciated about their answers collectively, right, is that you see this being a multi-pronged approach, right? There is not one set answer to doing and how we're going to deal with attrition in our field, right? And you've got some examples in there about, what folks are doing. The other thing that I would just say kind of philosophically, it's not a set of tasks, but I think we need to widen the tent. Okay, so what I mean by that is that in the past, we would have tended to gravitate towards people that somewhere in their background maybe read the word biomedical in some capacity or another. I think where we are today is that we'll continue to use those paths. Like for us, the military is a big path as well, whether it's established military BMETs or whether it's skilled bridge programs and the like. 38% of my organization is ex-military, so we're big believers in that. But what can you do kind of beyond that? Yeah, we talked about schools and the like. I think we look outside of our industry. It's interesting the number of IT people, especially those that work on hardware, that are interested in doing more interesting things with it on medical devices. That's a place we can explore. And a lot of times we're worried about manpower going the other direction, right? People going to the Googles and the Apples. There's actually a way to bring them back, because what we work on and its impact in terms of patient lives is actually a pretty amazing selling point. It's a heck of a lot more interesting than working on desktop PCs, as an example. The other thing, trying to address your point, Dave, okay, you got your program and all of that established. How do we keep people kind of engaged and sort of blend all of that new and the experienced folks together? Obviously, the people that are a part of your organization and have been, they need to be stimulated. If you're going to tell somebody that's been with you 15, 20 years that, hey, all you're going to do is PM and corrective maintenance as it comes up, that's going to get boring after a while, right? So you stimulate them by bringing them into places, and stretch assignments is really what we would call it, where you're pulling them deliberately out of their comfort zone to work on projects, to be a part of committees, to solve problems, in some cases that actually have nothing to do with technology. So really what we're looking for is the ability to apply engineering-oriented principles to problems that exist in healthcare delivery. Why can't you be a part of multidisciplinary teams and help with problems like that? So that tends to work with the experienced people. Another thing that I found is that there's always a certain percentage of folks out there that really love to be teachers and mentors. And so when we're looking at mid-level techs and beginning techs, sometimes just the buddy system, right? You give them someone to mentor, to kind of put under their wing, if you will, is a great way to keep a upper level person engaged, while at the same time, as long as you're not pairing them with somebody with bad habits, mind you, it's a good way to mentor kind of your more junior or entry level technicians up and the like. A couple of things that I'll say about sort of entering the field that maybe we didn't touch on is it is important, like in our state, it really resonated when you were talking about schools. There is no schools right now in Arizona. So anytime I'm recruiting people, if I'm not taking from a competitor, right, I'm having to deal with people out of state. So establishing relationships with schools outside of the state, making intern and extern ships available, and so that they know Banner Health, hey, we're interested in that, right? And so even though we're not in your backyard, please consider us with that. We want your students. We want the ability to help mentor and teach. We are now working with our community colleges to build certificate programs within Arizona. That's important for our local pipeline. And then we're extending into let me say primary education would be the way that it should be said, right? So STEM programs that school have, and really getting out in the community and selling this program. And it's interesting right now with COVID, right? We talk about a lot of things negative with COVID. COVID has never been better for our field. It's put a big giant spotlight on us. And if we don't take advantage of it, I mean, I don't want to capitalize on something bad, but I'm telling everybody you should, because it's the industry itself has never been viewed in such a strong light, and we ought to be able to capitalize that all up and down the education system, mentorships, and all of the like. Sorry, that answer went long, but anyway, hopefully it was helpful.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Why don't real quickly, let's see, do we have any questions from the audience that we might want to consider at this point?
Dave, we don't have any questions at this point. I believe you had some that we had talked about previously. If you'd like to address those, I will keep you posted.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, so please, everybody, if you have questions that you'd like to ask this esteemed panel, please feel free to do so. That'd be great. So yeah, let's go back then, and I guess what I would ask is just a general question. So from each of your perspectives, what I'd like to hear, and all three I'd like to answer, I'd like to hear, so I've been in the field for a while. I'm at a point in my career, I don't care what it is. I'm a BMET 1, 2, 3, I'm a specialist in lab and imaging, it doesn't matter what it is. And I'm contemplating a move, whether it's because I need to move for family, or I just want to see if I can't advance my career, I want to see if I can't challenge myself in another capacity. What I'd like to hear from all of you is, what should I be focused on? What things should I be looking at within myself to figure out where I should try to advance myself and make myself to be more desirable in whatever capacity it is? One of the things that I learned a long time ago on a personal note is, I always want to have the ability to turn down a job. I don't want to not get offered the job, right? So what do I need to do so I can make myself as desirable as possible, so I get all the opportunities I want, so I can pick the best one for me? So what's that look like? Let's go back to Erica.
Great. So once again, that's a big question. I think that you have to figure out what it is that you want next before you can start to answer that question. You know, if you're thinking, okay, I really want to get myself on a track towards a leadership role, or I'd really like to specialize in a certain area of equipment, or I want to expand the equipment that I know how to work on so I can be more valuable to my employer. That's kind of step one, is figure out which direction you're most interested in heading in next, and then based on that you can start to create some goals for yourself. If you want to move up into leadership, then reach out to your current supervisor and ask for that opportunity to be a mentor. Make sure that you're getting the chance to partner one-on-one with new employees that are coming in, or even interns, and getting that mentorship leadership experience, or ask for opportunities to lead projects to continue to gain and build on that experience. If you want to expand your training and certifications, or if you want to specialize in an area, make sure that you have that relationship with your manager or your leader, that they can help you come up with a plan. Something that we've started doing at Agility is progression planning for our BMET, so that they know, like, we know what trainings and experiences they need, and they know what the plan is for them to help build their career. So I think it's really important to be able to have that conversation. And if you don't have that relationship with your manager, either try to build it, or when you go to an interview with a company, make sure you're asking the questions, because that interview is not just you being interviewed by the company, it's also a chance for you to interview them. So you want to know, what is it that you're looking for in your next company? Think about the good things and the bad things that have happened in past jobs, so that you know what questions to ask to make sure that you're going in the right direction for your career. So those are some of the things that I would suggest if someone's looking to make that next big change. Figure out what you want to do, and then start setting some goals for yourself of how you're going to get there. And if you don't know what that is, take Ray's advice and go find some mentors.
Okay, great answer. Let's just move on down the line. Ray, yourself?
Yeah, I think to couple off of what Erica's saying, one thing that I think we often overlook, we look at the pay or the opportunities, and sometimes we overlook the day in the life. And there's so many different kinds of days in the life, from being an OEM service guy, rep, to guy for me, to being an in-house project manager who is just dealing with the new construction in the building, so your day in the life is going to be really different. So choose the day, choose the kind of lifestyle that you want to live. That's going to be really important, because there's these employers want you to be happy when you're at work, and they're offering you a job that has a lifestyle with it. So make sure that fits. And then once you're in the right, whether you're field service or in-house or working for an OEM or whatever you're doing, then yeah, have your goals, and then look for little opportunities. About 5 years ago, I shifted from just kind of kicking back and being a bench tech and kind of doing what I wanted to do, so that when my kids were little, to deciding I wanted to get into management, which I always knew was sort of something that I could do and wanted to do. And I just took care of it. I went to the community college and took project management academy and studied for my CHTM and took that. And I started teaching little classes that I worked for Adventist Health at the time. They would let me teach the classes to my peers, how to PM a ESU, whatever, just whatever interests you. Even if you can lead from anywhere you are, you can show your engagement from anywhere you are. And I think in order to be the person that's turning down opportunities, you really need to be in your wheelhouse and understand that. So if you're taking yourself seriously and you're responsible for all that growth, and you're not looking up to somebody to give that to you, that'll come through, and the opportunities, I think, will be everywhere. That one of the steel titans from the Industrial Revolution said, "We wish that everyone would come to work as if they owned the company," because leadership everywhere is looking for people that are engaged like that. That's how you hear the success stories of the janitor becoming the president of a big corporation, because that person came to work serious about improving their position every day. And I think that's the main thing you can do to have more and more and more opportunities. It's just to take your career a little bit seriously, and in the meantime, don't take yourself too seriously, because that's hard to work with too. But having a goal and having a plan and working it steadily enough that you trust yourself over time to get somewhere, and not in a big hurry to get a new promotion or take, sometimes we try to take too big of steps, I think. So have that high goal, and then just look around and say, what can I do today that helps my peers, helps my employees, and helps me highlight my talents. And some of you'll get more responsibility. Trust me, if you show that you're a responsible person in your career field, I think more responsibility is coming straight away. So.
Great, thanks. So Perry, before you get the answer, I'm gonna change it up just a tad for you. I mean, look, let's be honest. You're one of the most sought after positions in the country. I mean, you're one of the largest healthcare organizations. You're the top dog in the HTM community. And so I think that there'd be a lot of value if you could talk about your personal experiences, how you went from where you were to where you are, and the steps along the way that people could learn from, that they could, use for themselves. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Well, one thing that I would say, I am so glad that you threw a change up there, Dave, because I'm looking down here and going, son of a gun, Erica and Ray. I mean, I'm reading from the same playbook here. They laid out all of the right answers in here. So I'll be happy to talk a little bit, I guess, about my experience in there and see if I can synthesize it really into a few points. Because really it would be very easy to go back to what Erica and Ray said. I think whether that's just a sort of a generic description, a lot of personal journeys have elements of what they described in them. I don't think mine is any different. So if I had to synthesize this really into 3 points, I would say always be looking for something that's going to give you progressive experience, right? Because you want to be pushing forward with something. And that can take a lot of different forms, right? Whether it's a technical track, whether it's a management track, really doesn't matter. Just make sure that you're always putting yourself in a position to develop progressive experience. Second thing is you can't be idle, right? If you're not learning and you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. That's really where it is. There is no neutral in this industry. You're either growing or you're not growing. So you need to put yourself in a position where you do grow into, really both folks made this point, is the relationship that you have with those that you report to, right? They can help you do that. Now, I want to make the distinction between, it is not their role to do it for you. If you're sitting around expecting them to lay it out and map it out for you and help you push and prod all the way in there, depending on your leader, you might get some of that. Most of the time you're not. So really, it's the self-initiative and the self-drive, right? It's the desire to be a continual learner in whatever form that takes, and the initiative to kind of make those things happen. Own your career is really what it kind of comes down to. And then lastly, because the question started out as one where you might be leaving the current organization that you're in, right? What's out there? What are the opportunities? I think the best way to understand that in a way that's not threatening to the organization that you're currently in, because that can be if you don't do it right, what you do is you network, right? We have state associations, get involved in that. Get involved with Amy, get involved with MD Expo. We're glad that you're here listening to these webinars. Take an opportunity with John's team to present maybe at one if you get the opportunity to do that. You will grow professionally, do that, and more importantly, you grow that network. You start to understand who's out there. Where are they? Is Arizona a good place to come and be? I would argue it is. It's 75 degrees right now, and I'm in short sleeves. Rah, rah. You know, okay, I know it's not supposed to be an advertisement, but anyway, hopefully that's good right there, Dave.
Yeah, no, I think yes, I think that was great. Thank you very much. And I think I want to echo your sentiments in terms of the value of getting engaged with your regional, local, national societies and participating, because what you take away from it is just as important as what you share with others. Let's go back and find out if we've got any questions yet from the audience. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Dave. Yes, we do. What is the best way to find an internship or apprenticeship experience to gain hands-on skills before entering the field with a degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. Is there one of you that feels that you would be best suited to answer that question? To be honest with you, I'm not really sure where that would go either. One of you guys feel like you have a good answer?
Yeah, let me start with a rather simplistic view of that, and then I'm sure the others can elaborate to that. So one thing that I would say with Banner is that we're really starting to take this track a little bit more seriously than we have in the future, and that's a tough thing to have to admit to everybody here, but it's kind of been the case because, well, frankly, we didn't have to worry about it so much in the past, but it's a different day is the bottom line. So I think the thing that you want to do, and what we're doing even as an employer, is we're cultivating the relationship with the schools that offer that. Because for us, it's about name recognition, right? If we're not on somebody's list to give a prospective student, right, the opportunity, we're not going to be found. So that's one of the things that we're doing on our end. And then on your end, what you do is you get to those coordinators of internships and externships, and I'm going to emphasize both. An internship is typically paid, an externship is typically not, right? Because you get school credit for it. And it doesn't matter which one you pursue because they're both equally as valuable, right? It just comes down to the technical mechanics around what program that you pick. But I would be asking questions really of your educational institutions, really where those are. And if you're not currently in one, what we're doing, at least with our internships now, is we're starting to post those on job boards. So you can actually go in there like you would make any other employment inquiry, and you should be able to find it.
So before, if you guys want to have something to add, I just want to personally say that one of the things that I found is, and you might all want to consider this, is you'll find out that there's some hospitals that say they won't do it. And what I found out is that every single hospital likely has a volunteer organization. And you can get through the volunteer, you sign up as a volunteer, and then you can volunteer to be in the biomed department. And that's a great way to get into it. And what I would suggest is you can, I've gotten some of my best employees by just telling friends and families that there's an opportunity exists and that they can present themselves and just become a volunteer in a hospital and then shadow and work alongside of biomeds so they whet their appetite to want to get into profession, and then they start looking into further how it is that they can further their education. So thank you, Perry. I think that's great. Either Erica or Ray, do you guys want to expand upon that a little bit?
Sure. So agility is a little bit different in that we have over 95 working locations across the U.S. So, and each one operates a little bit differently. So, for instance, in Florida and in Indiana, we have long-running internship programs that are very successful, and those local teams are very connected to their colleges. And I've been working with some of our other teams to get internship programs up and running. So I have some in Texas and some in Iowa, trying to get one started in Baltimore, Maryland. But so my plan is in the future, yeah, we're going to have internships everywhere. But but for now it is piecemeal. So I'm always happy to talk to candidates who are interested in internships with Agility. But I think, Perry hit on kind of the key points. If you're looking to get an internship, start at your career services. I know not all career services programs are that helpful, just from my own experiences and connecting with them myself. So if you're not getting the direction that you need from there, then look at who's in your area. Reach out to the hospitals, either through the volunteer or you can go to LinkedIn and find out who the leader of their biomed program is. Sometimes it's their facilities leader who manages the biomed program. So, try to reach out to a few people. Look to see who's your local service provider in the area. You can do that on LinkedIn too. Find the groups, reach out to them directly, and let them know you're interested. You want to get experience in the field. I think, as you can hear from all of us here on this panel, we all recognize that talent is drying up in this field, and we need to do something to push people forward who are interested. So if you reach out and express interest, it should give you some payback in finding an internship for yourself.
Great. Let's go to another question. What's another question we have?
Dave,
Hi,
real
Dave.
quick, can I add? Sorry.
Of course.
I have just two quick points to add to that. I would add, contact your state biomed association, get connected with them, stay connected with them. Their leadership should be approachable, and they'll know what's going on in your area. And two, to piggyback off of Erica's point, I think LinkedIn is hugely underutilized, and you could really show who you are and what you're up to, what you're tinkering with. You could put out a message on LinkedIn that you're open, that you're interesting, and the hashtag IamHTM is pretty broadly read in our industry. So if you're trying to get in our vision, the people who are on there are pretty engaged, as far as I know, in terms of their careers. It's people who are taking themselves seriously, and so it's a pretty dynamic group of people that you'll gain exposure to by having the guts to step out on LinkedIn a little bit. So,
yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. All right, another question?
All right, Dave. Our next question is, any tips on interviews via Zoom or video calls versus in person?
I know I have a couple. Does one of you want to speak to this? I imagine Eric could probably do that quite a bit.
Yeah, I do have a few tips and just things I've learned myself as we've all transitioned into this remote world for the most part. So when you're check your camera first, check your connection first. So usually you'll be sent a link and you can click on it and make sure everything works, make sure your camera and mic are working. You don't have to have a computer, you can do it from your phone, but if you're doing it from a more mobile device like your phone, make sure that your phone is setting up separately from your hand so it's not shaking, especially if you get nervous. And then the other thing is to look at the camera when you're speaking. So we have a tendency to look at ourselves. This is me looking at my picture. I'm looking at Dave, I'm looking at Perry, but look at the camera so that you're actually looking at the person in the video. It helps with making that eye contact.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Any other quick thoughts from either of you?
I think that's good.
All right, what's another? That's a great question, by the way. I'm glad whoever asked that question. That was great. What's another question for us?
All right. Our next question is, what courses of study do you think will be most important in the future for CVETs?
Who wants to take that? Well, let me just start it out, because my personal opinion is I think it's more about the soft skills. I really do. I think technology has gotten to the point where it's like a car. It's telling us what's wrong before it actually breaks. And so technology and our involvement is minimal at this point. Technology is turning so fast that the clinical staff is having trouble keeping up with how to use it properly. And so most of our repairs are really about not using it properly. And it's around communicating and negotiating with the clinical staff as to how to, tell them that they're wrong without telling them that they're wrong. So I think soft skills are going to be more important than technical skills in the very near future, but that's my 2 cents. Anybody want to comment one way or the other?
Yeah, I think the CBET is probably an exam that probably needs some updating, quite frankly, right? Because if we stay literal to what it is, it doesn't necessarily reflect probably where the industry is at this point, and for whatever that's worth. And I had those certifications. But it just is what it is. I agree with Dave, and we led with it in a lot of respects. The soft skills are really important. I think the other thing technologically is the medical device world is on a complete collision course with information technology. So if you don't have IT skill sets of any variety in your background, that would be one that I would work on from the technology side, because you will use that. And as the future continues, you'll use it more. I mean, that's just the course we're on right now.
I agree. There won't be a single device that won't be connected to the internet or to the IT in some fashion or form. Any other thoughts from either of you two before we ask the next question?
Nope, I think you
I
covered it.
think there's going to be an increased role for project. I'm sorry, go ahead, Erica.
No, I was
Go ahead,
not
Ray.
saying anything.
I was going to say very, very briefly that I think there'll be an increased role for project management in HTM as well, or at least I hope there will be, for various purposes. But it's a really cool skill set to have, and it's the language that IT is using, and now construction is using, and it's a pretty neat way to efficiently get things done and learn from how you did it and really increase professionalism. And I think that's what HTM is really up against, with really having to professionalize in various business aspects besides just our technical and clinical knowledge base. So expanding into IT and project management, I see as really the pathways for growing our professionalism as an industry. So
Awesome. Is there another call or another question rather? I know we're getting close to our time. Is there one more question?
There is not. Actually, we are out of time, but thank you to Perry, Erica, Ray, and Dave for all of your knowledge and for a great presentation. I would like to encourage everyone to visit HTM Jobs to learn more about the opportunities available to you in the HTM industry. Please visit htmjobs.com. A quick reminder to our audience that you can receive credit for this live webinar. To obtain your continuing education certificate, please complete the post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you will be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We will be back next week with another webinar. Visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and complimentary registration. Thank you all and have a great afternoon.